Appeals meeting to order. Introductions. To my far left is Doug Rise. Next to me is Larry Elliott. On my right is Jacob Silva, and my far right is Charlie Cogden. Has everyone had a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting? If so, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve the minutes from the May 13th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Use your microphone, please. All opposed? None.
I'm abstaining. I was not in attendance.
Is there anyone here for public comment for anything not on today's agenda? Is there a motion to open the public part of our meeting tonight? And, sorry, this is old business tonight, and we are working on, the first case is case Z 2501 900 6th Street. The appellant is requesting a non-use variance for section 122-303, requiring a minimum side yard setback of 5 feet. The appellant is proposing to split the property into 3 parcels, parcel A, parcel B, and C, and is requesting a 2.3 feet from the new east property line to parcel C, of parcel C to the existing building. Number 2, the appellant is requesting a non-use variance from section 122-482-4, requiring all institutional uses maintain a minimum setback of 10 feet from any lot line in a residential district. The most recent use of the existing structure was an institutional use, requiring the non-use variance for parcel C. Number 3, the appellant is requesting a non-use variance from section 122-303, which limits maximum lot coverage to 35% in the R2 single and 2-family zoning districts. The proposed new parcel C would exceed this lot coverage maximum. Mr. Dreyer, this is the A case. We can talk about the B case here after we do the A case, because you've got all of them listed here. That's my agenda. I apologize for that. I take that question entirely back.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Okay.
Move to open for public hearing regarding case Z 2501.
Is there a second?
Or
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Is there someone here? Is Mr. Correa here? Do you want to step up to the podium, sign in, and we'll do this again.
Okay, I'm all set. Should I start? Okay. Since we were here last time, we had D&M go over the prints again. Hopefully everybody's got one that they can read this time for size-wise. If not, I do have one really enlarged here that I can have passed around.
Each of us had a copy of that in our packet, so we've had a chance to review it.
Okay. Well, what I'm here to do is propose to split off the parcel that the house sits on from the church and the parking lot, keeping the church and the parking lot as one parcel, and then the house as its own entity. For this not to go through, it's going to be detrimental to the neighbors and everything. They are all in favor of this. They know that if those buildings sit vacant, it's going to be a blight on their property, and we'd have more neighbors buying into the neighborhood, paying more taxes, and it would be good for all of us. Is there any questions?
Does anyone have questions on the setback requirement here?
I have one. Looking at this map on the east, basically between parcels B and C, it looks like the property line is jutting over. Yes. So that's actually going to be in line with the bottom of the stairs?
No.
That's when I'm looking at this thing, if the big map here, this dark line, is that the property line that you're
Can we
proposing?
take the arrow to where you're speaking of? No, that's, there's, I believe if you arrow down to the outside and back of the garage, doesn't it say 5.12 feet of distance between the garage and the steps?
It shows 5.3 feet between the property line and the edge of the church building, and then it looks like there is not a measurement shown between the garage and the property line unless,
Yes.
or there's a property, oh, here, right here.
Yeah, right there.
5.12.
Right.
I believe Mr. Elliott is referring to the property line skirting right here where the it says new 5x9 relocate steps, where the property line runs alongside the edge of the steps here.
I was just looking, there's that really dark line that runs through there. And if you zoom in on it, I don't know if you can, that dark line zooms right over next to the stairs. I'm just trying to confirm, is that the actual property line? Because according to that, it actually comes up right to the bottom of the steps.
No, I don't believe that's what it refers to.
So the property line is a straight line all the way back to,
The other
all the way
fence.
south. It's a straight
Yes.
line all the way south.
Yes, and
No.
Isn't-
Point of order, I would say,
Okay.
like, this is showing a jog where this is your property line right here, and then it shows it jogging over. See, this is the proposed property line right here.
Okay, yep.
And it's diverting over this way and then coming down. And Mr. Elliott is saying that this is
Oh, I
the
see
set of
that,
steps.
Yes, I don't know why that would be diverted over, or I guess I don't know what when they do have the distance here,
Here.
they just carry the line right through.
So this is similar to the initial proposal where there was a jog on the initial proposal as well. So again, this is what was included in the packet. From a zoning ordinance perspective, I will state that stoops and steps for egress landings that are under, where the landing is under 30 square feet in area, and the steps themselves are exempt from setback requirements because it services an entrance or an exit. There's a provision in the ordinance that does speak to stoops and landings.
Okay, so that's not a concern then as far as the setback.
It was not included as part of when the steps were shown to be relocated. Myself and Mr. Multaine noted the steps and did not see that it required an additional variance or a zero lot line variance. The building itself being that 2.3 foot distance at its narrowest, I scrolled up slightly on the image to show right here where it indicates 2.3 feet at the nearest point between the church on parcel C to the property line. That's the narrowest point. So that 2.3 foot is still reflected from the original public notice. The steps being relocated corrects what was an issue for the Zoning Board of Appeals during its first hearing in April, where the steps were not indicated on the survey drawing, and they in fact crossed the proposed property line because they were directed.
I'm going to have questions on the step when we get to
Sure,
the next one.
absolutely.
So that's going to be under B for me, because it's not relevant, at least this, other than I was concerned about the setback aspect, but
Understood.
thank you.
So I have a comment here then. So the steps now are within, if the footprint of the building continued, they're within that footprint, that they're on the other side of the furthest edge of the building. Do you understand what I'm saying? I apologize if I'm not.
Not fully, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the steps now are within the setback, right, that they are requesting? Because they have turned them.
The steps are fully on the proposed parcel C based off the new property line. The steps as they are situated would be within that 2.3 foot area, but the steps are exempt from setback requirements because of they are serving as an egress to a landing to a.
Right, thank you.
And I do have one other question regarding the maximum lot coverage of 35%. At the last meeting, I believe we asked for information on what is the percentage of Lot C that what was formerly the church, what does that cover? And I don't remember seeing that in there as far as what that percentage was. I got the drawings and it shows that it's obviously well over 35%, but I missed. There it is. I apologize for missing that. I scanned right over that. I apologize. I withdraw that.
Any other questions or comments on the setback for the south lot line? No, I'm sorry, the east lot line for the church building.
Question. The chair, staff. The 2.3 foot setback that's being requested is for the church itself, the building. Does the same setback apply to the drive on the residential portion on Lot B, parcel B?
It does not, no. There's no required setback for a residential driveway from the property line. Residential driveways can extend right up to a property line. Additionally, detached garages can be up to 2 feet from a lot line. And so, judging by the proposed new property line, parcel C was the only one that created setback, the need for a variance from setback requirements.
And as far as the garage is concerned, it has a proper setback, right? By where they drew the property line?
From the new property line, it's unclear whether that jog there on the south, but those are an existing one. The only new line, and I'll indicate here where my mouse is at, the only new line being proposed is this one right here. This neighboring property line on the south side here, this is existing. It's unclear whether this area I'm circling with my mouse here is 2 feet or not, but that's not a subject to the variance because this property line here is not being adjusted. So the distance between this corner of the garage and this corner property line here is it does not warrant a variance because it's existing. This new line is what the requested variance is from.
Question? But the property line between the church building and the existing garage is fine, because we have 5 feet from the church property, from the church building to the property line, the new proposed property line, correct?
In this area here, I believe that's item number 2, Institutional uses require 10 feet. And so creating a new, because this variance is occurring before a use variance or any proposed new use for the church use, the church building, the most recent established use there was institutional. All institutional uses, such as places of worship, require a 10-foot setback. By creating a new lot line there, 10 feet is the requirement. So at its narrowest, it's 2.3, so that's the request. But there is that portion here where it's 5.3, which is also deficient.
But doesn't that then require a 5-foot variance? If it's a 10-foot, you're saying that an institutional use is 10 foot. We're approving, or we're asked to approve a 2.3 foot on the north side, but this is going to be a 5-foot variance here because it's all side yard. Should that not be noted in the variance itself?
If you grant a 2.3-foot variance, that's for I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, it's for the furthest extent of an encroachment, or not encroachment, the furthest extent of an encroachment into the setback, the required setback. Because of the nature of the way buildings and this kind of jogging property line, it would be cumbersome to grant a variance for 2.3 foot here, and then where it jogs over here to measure this distance and then this distance, and then say the building was on an angle or something like, you'd be asking for individual dimensional setback variances anytime the property line or the building changed distance from the property line. So since 2.3 is the greatest variance requested, because it's the one that's needed for this portion right here, that is what is being requested. And it would cover the 5.3 foot, because if you grant 2.3, 5.3 is further. At its greatest extent, 2.3 is the closest it gets to the property line.
Okay, I can understand that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions on the portion one of this request?
Question to the chair. Are we going to handle these as 3 separate motions? Should they be 3 separate motions? We can't do them as one? Well,
You can do from a staff perspective, it's recommended because all 3 variances are needed to have the lot split. It would be difficult to approve the setback variance, but not the lot coverage variance, because the split wouldn't be able to occur without both. Basically, in order for the lot split to occur, all 3 variances, I, and I are all needed.
For this, so my question, or what I would like to see then is, for the sake of expediency, is that we go through these 3, but then when we start talking about them, we'll talk about them individually when we start working on our closed session, that we'll address each of them. Is that how you think it would be the best?
If you would like to do it that way, you can also review the standards as it relates to the case proposed as a whole, as opposed to does each of those items meet each of the standards. The case was presented as a full, this is the request for, it's variances from 3 different sections, but it's one case that's being proposed, and you could determine whether the case, based off the application, meets the standards and the dimensional variance standards, rather than having to determine that for each of them.
Okay, thank you. So the 10-foot setback, we've covered that with number 1, right? No?
You could say that, yeah, based
Yeah,
off
that
of
we've covered that. Okay.
It's
Does
a separate
anyone-
section. That's the reason it's included, is because in addition to the standard R2 setback requirements. It has that additional institutional use setback requirement, but they are very
Okay.
very similar.
Thank you. Everybody understand that? That kind of 1 and 2 go together? Any questions on 2, other than what we've asked already? Okay, number 3, addressing the coverage of the lot. Are there any questions for Mr. Carrera on that?
Comment, I think the new survey gives us the information that we were lacking from the initial submission that we reviewed 2 months ago. We now see what the total coverage of the lot is by the existing property, and I think it's pretty clear that it's an existing situation that we have to deal with, and we just have to make a motion appropriate to that situation.
You made a motion, is there a second?
That was just a comment.
Okay. I'm sorry, thank you. I have a comment on the coverage of the lot. I would like to see, if we grant this variance, that it show the amount of coverage for the lot so that it stipulates that they can't really add to the church because of it's already covering most of the lot. Is that possible?
It's possible, but it would be unnecessary. Any expansion of the building footprint wouldn't be permitted under zoning unless there was an additional variance request because of the lot coverage. If the zoning board determines that the variance is appropriate to grant these variances to split the lot coverage, I believe the staff report coverage amount was 56.13, and that was based off of the estimated or the approximate acreage and the approximate building area shown on the survey. If there was any expansion of it, it would exceed that amount. So if you were to grant it, it's granting it as is. Any additional lot coverage would require an additional variance unless the future zoning ordinance change the lot coverage requirements, but that would be something that would be already covered by, it would become a nonconformity.
Thank you. Is there other questions on the requests for these 3 items? For Mr. Carrera?
No, I don't think there's anything else.
Do you have anything to add?
Just like I said, it would be great for the neighborhood and everything, and the neighbors are all for this to go through, just to where everything's occupied and maintained and not run down.
Okay, thank you.
Question to staff through the chair? Or how do I say that? Question through the chair to staff. Who actually approves the split of the property?
That's done through the assessing department with sign-off from planning and zoning.
So, okay, so they would have to get our action and your sign-off then before they would move forward with the split?
Yes, Terry signs off on all land division applications that come through the assessing department.
Okay, thank you. So we're not actually approving the split ourselves?
Right. Tonight, if there was an approval granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals, it would be approving the variances that would then allow Terry to sign off on the split.
So, question to the chair. I'm not sure of the order of this. But the parking issue is going to need to be talked about at some point in time, because the split,
But it's not,
But yeah, a public comment would be at this time before discussion moves forward.
let's finish this that we're working on, because the parking wasn't in this part, right? That's not what I remember reading it.
The split of the lot would be granting the parking lot to be a separate parcel from the church. So it's the subject of this particular case, yes.
Separate. Okay. So is there anyone here in the audience that wants to offer comments on this application for variance?
Go ahead.
Yes, state your name.
Yep, my name is Benjamin Champagne. I'm here obviously for my own case as well, but I would also like to toss in support for the split of this and the variances being granted in Mr. Correa's favor. I agree foremost with his first position, which is that to not put these into some sort of use will be more of a detriment to the neighborhood than not. His interest in splitting it and selling the house would probably still be very good for the community, allowing another person to join that and have an old house. And I think that it also gives the church an opportunity to be utilized regardless of my case or not. I think that this would be in the best interest of Bay City and that particular community, and of course for the investors and developers. So I just want to lodge my support for that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here for public comment? Did you have any other correspondence on this than what you've shared with us?
There was no correspondence received for this case.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So I would like to, yeah. So, again, can we have a motion to open the business section to handle this?
move to open business session on case Z 25-01.
Support.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Comments? Does someone have comments on these three requests?
I guess I will start if that's all right. I'll go through all of them tonight because I quite frankly don't feel like it right at this moment in time. I'm going to start with A, and I'm going to address all three requests for the non-use variances at the same time rather than repeating myself over and over again. Strict compliance with restrictions governing area setback, frontage, height, bulk, density, or other non-use matters will unreasonably prevent the owner from using this property for a permitted purpose or will render conformity with this chapter unnecessarily burdensome. I believe by splitting these properties, which is with a house sitting right in the middle of them, probably the most realistic and feasible option in order to do anything with that church at this point. I believe there is no other way to do it than without giving a setback variances. Both of the 2.3 feet requested because of section 122.303, as well as the request regarding sections 122-482, parentheses 4. That church has been there ever since I moved to town, and I'm guessing is were there long, long before that. And I'm surprised that it was all one property when I first saw this to start with. I always thought it was a couple separate properties built right on that. In addition, if you look at the south property line, though that's not in question tonight, that also sits really close, and I'm guessing was granted a variance, or at least it was grandfathered in when these were required years and years ago. So just the way that lot sets and the way the church is built, I don't believe there's anything else you can do. If anybody wanted to do anything with that building, they would be in here requesting these same variances. So in addition, because of the way these property is split, having a house right in the middle, because this church is so big, it does require, by breaking these properties off, a variance, or non-use variance, sorry, regarding the lot coverage maximum. I believe it is at 56, approximately 56.13. So as a suggestion, at least if I make a motion on this, the request would be to grant a non-use variance at 56.25%, just to make sure that the math was done correctly, because I don't know, I didn't do the math myself. So that's all I have on A, and that very well might cover a couple other ones as well.
My comments on A would be that to deny this or for not to be allowed to do this would be unnecessarily burdensome for the applicant. One reason is I can't imagine someone wanting to use the church for any other purpose that would be allowed because of the uniqueness of the building. So allowing the variance is probably the best solution to that.
I would like to note under staff's report regarding the fact that the appellant, after our last meeting, and we had the discussion about that stairway on the east side of the building, they went ahead and relocated that, changed the orientation of that stairway without a permit. And I think we need to address that in our motion in terms of a condition that they do get a building permit and Historic District Commission review and approval.
Is that necessary, Mr. Dreyer, to?
You can, if you so wish. I know that the building official has sent notification to the property owner regarding the stairs and the lack of a permit. But if you, as the ZBA, you can also make mention of it.
All right, I guess I'm going to bring up my question on that then. If we're going to possibly include that in this request, in this case, then I do have a question on the drawings that were given to us for the second case that the applicant submitted, because the drawings on there included rough blueprints. I'm not going to say they're full blueprints, but rough blueprints, and on none of those blueprints is that side door even included. So if we're going to include that, that might be something on why. Is this a mistake in the blueprints, or was that door added afterwards? And I'm guessing probably without a permit if that was the case.
My recollection that egress was there and the steps went straight down to the driveway. Is that what you're referring to, Mr. Elliott?
Well, the former egress that went down to the driveway was a wooden staircase coming out and down. But even that, if you look at the 3 pages of floor plans that were submitted, not one of them have a door in that back corner, which would tell me the door wasn't there to start with, so there would be no reason for a staircase. So I don't know when that door was put in, or if this drawing, which seems accurate, at least from what I can see from the outside, seems accurate otherwise, but wasn't in here. I don't know if the applicant wants to come up and speak to that, since we're potentially addressing that, or if this, when those stairs were put in.
Yeah.
Are you asking to invite the applicant back up?
Yes, I guess I'll make a motion to have the applicant come back up to ask that question, since it was brought up on this case and really wasn't part of this case initially.
Is there support for Mr. Elliott's motion?
Support.
All in favor of the applicant answering further questions signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay? Okay. I will say that when you look at the photographs, I think the door is not where we originally thought it was. So, Mr. Correa, please come up to the podium.
Yes, I believe the door's been there for probably 50 years plus. If you go there and look at it, that door looks like it's been there forever. The only thing, I was not in town. I asked my son to take the steps out. They weren't wood, they were solid concrete. So I asked him to jackhammer those steps out, and he took it upon himself while I was gone to just turn them like they should have been. He did go down and try to get a permit and everything, and they denied him a permit, saying that it's commercial, therefore he had to get an architect and for a 5-foot step, and until he got an architect, they wouldn't give him a permit. And then in here, it says residential. So he should have just been able to go in there like he did and pay for his permit. They even told him how much it was, $60. He went down there, went to pay, and then things got totally switched around on him. And he said, the person that spoke to him said, no, we can't do this because now it's got to be done with an architect.
Okay,
So-
so I'm just going to say that's not relevant to me at this point in time. That's something you have to take up with the city.
But I just wanted to let you know the
My
circumstances.
question is then to you, I'm assuming you saw these designs,
Yes,
and in the back corner where those steps are,
I would say they just did not put
they
the
just
door in.
forgot to add that in here.
Right, they did not put it in, but
That's what I was looking for. Thank
as
you.
far as the age of the door and stuff like that, I think it's, who knows, 50
Okay,
years,
thank you.
60 years old.
That answers my question.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you.
Move to close and return to business section.
Support.
All in favor of going back to business session signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? We're back in session. Are we moving on to letter B?
I guess I'll address letter B and C at the same time. This would do substantial justice to the applicant, as well as other property owners that may have a church already built on their land within the setback areas that would come before us again in the future, as well as that would exceed the lot coverage and institutional use. So any properties very similar to this would potentially assist them down the road. And a lesser variance, I don't think is even practical in this situation. I don't think you could do anything with a lesser variance other than set it at 0, which is not feasible in my opinion either. So That's all I have on those two.
Any comments on that portion of the standards? I'll take D. This building was built, I guess I don't know if we have the year that the church was built. But it is unique. It's a building that was built to hold a lot of people in the neighborhood, and it's unique in the neighborhood, and I believe that's the reason that we should granting these variances. Also tackle self-created. The building is what the building is, and it sits on the property as it sits there. And in order to move forward with splitting the property and using it for a repurposed use, that it is not self-created. Anyone else want to add comments to the 5 standards that we've just discussed?
I will say that due to the way this property was initially formed, I guess, since it appears all 3 lots have always been 3 lots, to separate them, which makes the most sense going forward, creates a unique circumstance to this property because of the size of that building that's been there for as long as any of us have been alive. And the problem is not created or self-created because of that. I think that covers it for me at least.
Okay, now that we've discussed all the standards, is there a motion?
Point of order. Are we going to discuss public comments? Were there any?
There were. Do you want to discuss ones?
There were no old ones received for this case either. The public comments received were for case 2502.
Yes, sorry. So, based on our discussion, is there a motion?
I will make a motion that in case Z2501, excuse me, that based on the previous discussions, that the variance, non-use variance requested in number 1 be granted regarding section 122.303 minimum side setback, and that the setback be requested as requested at 2.3 feet from the new east property line, referred to as parcel C. Excuse me. Do you want all 3 of them together, or? I'm willing to do that since I'm.
Yep, you can make all 3 in one motion.
Okay. That the non-use variance requiring a 10 feet setback from all institutional uses as required under section 122-482 parentheses 4 be granted in this case also to the same distance as listed in number 1, and that the maximum lot coverage required under section 122-303, the non-use variance be granted in an amount not to exceed 56.25% of parcel C. And I would also like to add that if all possibly feasible, a deed restriction be added to require parcel A go together in the future with parcel C as far as any sales.
Would this be the time to address that, or with the second appeal?
This would be the one to address parking and any sort of conditions placed on a motion.
Comment, we don't have a second yet. Do we want to have a second before we open for discussion?
We're still in our business session.
Right, but a motion's
Motion
been made.
hasn't been seconded, is that correct?
It hasn't been seconded yet. I'll second the motion. Now we can have discussion on the motion?
Okay, so now we can discuss the motion.
The motion addressing the tying of parcel A to parcel C is appropriate, I think, because we are splitting the properties now. The second case has issues relating to parking, but not to the split of the property. So if we're going to split the properties now, I think it is appropriate that we deal with the issue of parcel A being tied into parcel C. And so I will support the motion in that regard.
If it's easier, I will also add that motion to the other one as well, and I'll put it in both of them.
From, if a point of order from staff, in lieu of an attorney assigned to the Zoning Board of Appeals, we don't have a legal opinion on the exact, there had been a question at the last meeting of what remedy would solve tying the parking that services the church building currently and any future endeavors at the church building on parcel C. It was brought up, deed restriction, some sort of access agreement. It was not determined what the best vehicle was. The motion present uses the term deed restriction. If there was an alternative proposed by the applicant after consulting with an attorney, that would do the same, in effect, that a deed restriction would do, but is not a deed restriction, would the Zoning Board of Appeals wish to entertain anything other than a deed restriction, or is that the option that the ZBA would like to pursue?
So can we, some type of conveyance that would keep these together, but that the appellant or the purchaser would seek a legal opinion on how to do that?
One of the things
Comment?
that Tony and I talked about would be what's decided after the meeting is a decision form. So the decision form could be made up and then have that recorded at the county register of deeds. This way, in the event that a title research is done in the future, that document would be assigned a library page and it would show up, and then they would be responsible to address that. But it would be recorded at the county register of deeds.
So this is analogous to a case that the Planning Commission had regarding the street vacation down on McGraw. Thank you, Terry. Where we had a street that was requested to be vacated, and then We found out after the request that there was another property owner that used that street for egress out onto Harrison. And we, the Planning Commission, did not mandate any specific form. We gave it back to the property, the two adjacent property owners, to work out between them to come up with an agreement that would work. And then we asked for review and approval of that once it was effectuated before we took our final action. So I think that's the same thing that we're talking about here, is that we don't necessarily want to specify any specific conveyance or legal document, but we need to see something from the parties involved in this that would indicate that that's going to be effective going into the future.
And I believe when I made my motion, if I worded it correctly, I thought I did, I indicated that it would be requested that they try to do that if feasible. So if the city attorney or someone else determines that it's not feasible to add that in there as a requirement of this, then it's not feasible, and then that should cover it. So I would think it would be up to either city staff or the city attorney to determine whether that can be done as part of this. And if it can't, it can't. I don't think that way it doesn't need to come back and forth and debate it a whole lot. If it can be done, great. If it can't, well, it can't.
But I did
If
like,
that makes sense.
I did like Terry's comment though about the, what did you call that document, Terry?
Well, after the meeting minutes are prepared, a decision form, as we would call it, which is just taking the same information, the motion that was the meeting minutes, inserting it into a document that would be mailed or given to the appellant after the meeting.
Then we would record that with the Register of Deeds.
Then we could take that and have it recorded at the Register of Deeds. 'Cause the only other option would be in the future, somebody coming into the planning department and having our records, you know, tell the story. And if it's recorded, at least there's a secondary location that that information is available.
That would require it to be part of the motion, though, to record. We don't make a habit of recording variances on properties with the Register of Deeds unless it is part of the motion to require that the variance approval be recorded with the Register of Deeds.
So do you need me to amend that portion of the motion?
If you, from Mr. Rise's comment, if that is what isn't, if you want that to be part of what staff does after the approval, then I would, yeah, amend it.
Then I would like that added to that motion. Do I need to restate it, or is it clear from what we've been discussing? It's clear to me. I don't know if it's clear to everybody else.
Restate it, please, so that everyone's on the same page here.
Staff intends to record the minutes and/or decision form that includes the motion by the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval of the variances with the Register of Deeds for these properties.
Thank you.
And I made the second on that, so I will second the amendment.
Any other comments, questions? So we're ready to vote on this motion? Been stated and seconded. With no other questions or comments, then
Would you like me to call roll?
yes, please.
Mr. Rise?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Ms. Rise?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mr. Congdon?
Yes.
5 yeas, no nays. Moving on to case number, these are all the same, case number Z 2502. The appellant is requesting a use variance from section 122-102 that would, if granted, authorize the establishment of an event facility in an R2 single and two-family residential zoning district. Equivalent uses would include indoor commercial recreation, theater, cinema, retail, and community meeting space. Event facilities are not permitted in an R2 single and two-family residential zoning districts, but are permitted in the C2A, C2B, and C3 zoning districts. The appellant must obtain a use variance from R2 single and two-family zoning district regulations to establish an event facility with the additional uses outlined. Is there someone here to speak to us about this request? You signed in the first time?
Did.
Okay.
Yep. All right. Yeah, so my name is Benjamin.
Yeah, state your name for me again.
Benjamin Champagne. Here the second time to discuss this. For just a quick overview, I wanted to get a change of use variance for this facility, which has historically obviously been used for assembly, but not in the way that I have proposed here, with many of the uses being institutional, but probably the primary one to discuss being concert usage as a concert hall. And when we left last time, I think the largest question that we had was the square footage, because that helps to determine the occupancy, which then leads into this parking stuff that we have here as well. Just to flip back, I don't think it matters, but just to state, the drawings that I had were actually created from something different than the blueprints. They were created from actual measuring inside of it, and therefore the door was just an error on my half. It was just a plain out error. I imagine that the pastor probably installed that door 50 years so he could pop right out of his house and go right to work. That would be my guess. So yeah, anyhow, I attached the square footage there. I have a loose knowledge of what those occupancies would be. However, that would require the fire department to rate that. But in my profession, typically the square footage of the room is divided by 5 in order to get your standing room occupancy. And it is divided by 7 typically to get your theater or auditorium style occupancy. And it is divided by 12 typically to get your dining or at table occupancy. With the footprint of a stage in there, you would eliminate that square footage to accommodate that occupancy, and so they usually account for that. So the number that you arrive at just off of the documents that I've provided would be probably significantly lower. Like I had said in the previous one, I had guessed it would be around a 400-person occupancy in the main room, and that is still my general guess, 400 to 450. I think that the basement one would be about 300 or maybe 250. So somewhere in that world. And less than that makes it not a, the business venture that I'm proposing would be in the red. So I need numbers of that degree for this to function for myself. So if we were to negotiate something downward, I don't know that that would really work in this case. I don't need it to be that way all the time. I think that a sellout show in a market as small as Bay City is only going to occur 4 times a year. It's very, very difficult to sell that many tickets in this club level profession. However, that would happen a few times a year, and so that's why we're here, is to talk about that and the effect that that could have. I think that kind of covers all of it. I'm pretty sure. Hopefully everybody's kind of remembers our meeting 2 months ago.
Any questions for Mr. Champagne?
I guess I have a couple. And well, first, I thank you for apologizing for that error. That was very nice. Second, when you indicate larger events of 200 to 400 people occurring at most once a month, Do you have a concern if a restriction is added to this use variance, limiting that number to once a month?
Limiting it to once a month, if it's at the high end, that would probably still work. I would have to probably compose a little bit stronger of a business plan that accounts for that. But no, I think that would probably work.
And the reason I ask that is because there's concerns within the neighborhood, obviously from some of the comments that were given at the last meeting and some of the comments that I read tonight regarding parking, and especially considering that that parking lot half a block away realistically is not going to hold enough people to have 400 people in your venue.
No, yeah.
So they're going to be parking along the street or in front of other people's, and I don't know what you have to help combat that. But hopefully you come up with something. I'm not going to add it or put it in. I don't think it should be a part of the motion for that, but I do have that concern. In addition, another question, is there an issue if we limit the time? Because you put 10 o'clock on weekdays and midnight on weekends, and I don't know to the city staff, you can answer this if you have to, if we can add that restriction as well, again, because you are right in the middle of a neighborhood.
Yeah, I propose that because I think that's pretty fair. I think on most weeknights, I'm getting old and I don't want to be at a concert that late anyway, so I think that those restrictions are fine, yeah.
And and through the city staff, because I don't remember what the current city statutes are regarding noise, would it be easier to say that they have to meet those times or meet just the city ordinance and close a half hour before the city ordinance says they have to be quiet? Because I want time for people to get out to the car without making so much noise, if that makes sense.
The noise ordinance would stand on its own as an enforceable ordinance, so if there was, some type of violation or there was a complaint that they had to go out and address it, they would address it based on that noise ordinance.
So I know the noise ordinance indicates a decibel level, but I didn't know if it included a time. If it said you can't have above even a different decibel level after a certain time at night.
Yes, it does speak to specific hours.
Okay. So it's already in the ordinance, so we don't really need to address it at this point.
I feel that's a true statement.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have at this point.
I want to ask you about parking. Have you thought about finding locations for off-street parking that you could use when you have these large crowds? Because I see that there would be, in my mind, an issue along those streets if people are parking them up for emergency vehicles, fire trucks, and all of those types of items. So have you thought about finding a location close walking distance?
Yeah. Yeah, we've actually executed this at other places that I work where you're in an area with really high traffic and low parking. And so some of the techniques that we do is firstly you identify a partner, say the funeral home down the road or somebody that might be amenable to, helping for free or a few dollars. And then what you do is you put out on your social media or in the event page diagrams, because a lot of people will need to see those previous. And so you show them where they can park. And then, of course, for fire and ambulance and stuff, we have staff that would be out there and would, usually cone areas off, often just for the band to load in. And then once you park them, you leave the cones in place, and that allows emergency vehicles too. So that's standard practice, those two things. As far as actually going into the community, I haven't done that work yet, but I feel confident that I'll be able to. How many people will play ball with me? I don't know. But I assume I would be able to find a few. And I think that, in some of the more urban places I work, Grand Rapids, Detroit, it isn't unusual at all for fans to walk, from basically downtown to here. So do I expect that to happen constantly? Of course not. People are going to end up parking residential, but I think if you put somebody out in a vest and you keep them from doing anything that's outrageous. I don't think it would infringe on the neighbors if we kept that to a minimum.
I was just wondering, I see multiple different styles. There's the main concert hall and then a yoga studio.
Yeah.
And all other rooms used as design kitchens. Can you explain more about those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the main concert hall, I think, is the one that probably imposes the most stress on the neighborhood. And that's the one we're talking about, maybe limiting and having large concerts there, you know, where the square footage actually shows that it could be probably close to 400, 450 people. The basement one, you know, will to be seen, but that would be a much smaller place, and so that would be for your local shows where it might not even fill the parking lot. A lot of shows that are played at bars or venues like that, 30 people show up. You know, it's not a ton of people. These people that want to be in that community and spend their money that way, that is still an income stream, and it is a culture that people want to be a part of, so that's something that we want to provide. And the majority of shows in a city the size of Bay City are down in that basement area. The other rooms, like the kitchen and stuff, I don't have any plan to change that. I would like to just continue to utilize that as a kitchen, green room space for, you know, touring acts or bands, or if we want to have some kind of a potluck or whatever. The yoga space upstairs, that is an intentional design, and I do think that we would offer yoga classes and health-based classes, you know, on the regular. That would probably be a weekly thing. I'm a big part of a yoga community, and I know that there's always instructors looking for places to teach at. So, and then the other rooms, there's offices. I believe that those would be used for settlement and just to run businesses. I'm also a landlord, so I think that I would, you know, utilize that for some of my other activities. And yeah, does that explain it pretty well?
Yes. I guess I would like to know, are you familiar with the Scottish Rite building that's nearby?
I am.
Masonic Temple. What makes this concert hall different from those venues that are nearby?
Yeah. One of the main things is that the Scottish Rite is basically inactive. I've tried to run concerts there for about the last 5 years and cannot get in there. It has been nearly inactive. The Masonic, I do run concerts at all the time. And because of their scheduling, and they've actually had a lot of success, they're running a lot of films there, and they're running a lot of plays, and they don't have the calendar availability for the type of thing that I'm proposing, which is going to be probably a lot more music-centric. The Masonic seems to focus a lot on plays, and when a play goes in, that can take up the rehearsal space and the stage space for many weeks. So that's one of the main differences and why this need is here, but I do understand the question. And then the second thing is that both of those organizations have been run by somebody that doesn't actually come from a concert background at all. So all of the infrastructure is bad to poor, or poor to bad. It doesn't really work. They haven't had anybody in there that's actually like worked in that industry and knows how to, you know, move people in and how to bring in acts that actually work. And so I think that a space that is dedicated to that and that is helmed by myself and some of the people that I work with will just have a lot more success.
And then you're familiar with the Friendship Shell. For what you want to do, it cannot be incorporated in an already existing amphitheater where concerts happen, and has parking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question too. I've also helped produce some shows at the Friendship Shell, and that's a great place. That's a very large venue. That at its best can hold, you know, 3,000 people. So we're talking a whole different level of talent. We're talking PA and lighting packages that cost $20,000 to $40,000 to bring in, and talent that costs $100,000 that's much larger. So I'm talking about a much smaller scale environment. But yeah, those are very valid questions. So yeah. But I've worked at almost all those places and enjoy them, and I think that they're doing great. Matter of fact, the Friendship Shell, just to pound down on that, has been doing great the last 2 years.
In your use variance request in the narrative, a couple of items. Under item 1, you indicate that Use variance to operate the building as an event and banquet facility as defined in section 122, 152 of Bay City zoning ordinance, with equivalent uses including indoor commercial recreation, yoga and workshops, theater, cinema, film screenings and performances, retail, pop-up sales, sales events, and community meeting spaces. This use aligns with property's existing layout and allows its function as an arts and cultural venue. And then goes on to say the intended use is structured and infrequent, with most events drawing under 100 attendees weekly and larger events of 200 to 400 people occurring once a month. So for all of the events except for the largest, the 200 to 400, what types of hours of operation are you contemplating having?
Yeah, so in the concert market, it's kind of, you take things as they come. So if an agent sends you a band that's on tour and you can accommodate it, you do. It could be as infrequent as 6 shows in a month, and it could be as frequent as, 22. It really depends, and it depends on the capacity of, your time. Usually that level, which I call the club market artists, they tour most significantly in spring and fall because the summer gets gobbled up by all your like Pine Knob type shows, and that's where all the consumers spend their money. And a lot of them don't tour in the winter because they're broke kids in vans and they don't want to be on the snow. So you get these 3-month stretches of kind of high intensity where you might see 20 concerts in a month, and then you get these stretches where you only see 5 or 6. Addressing these other things to get to your hours, I think that we would probably start with almost no actual open hours. It would just be like a cultural center that is event-based only. And if the need arises where we start to say showcase art or something where there's a demand for Wednesday through Friday, we're open from 6 to 8 to come in and see the art show, then we would do that. But I think as it is, say right now, if you wanted to go to the Temple Theater, you could go knock on the door. You're not going to get in. It's not open. It's a hall. So I think that's how it would function entirely based on events until deemed that there was something we were doing that needed hours of operations. Does that help to answer? It's convoluted. Yeah.
So, but they're not necessarily tied in with each other. The smaller type venues are not necessarily tied into the large events.
I don't understand the question. I'm so sorry. These smaller events, like say, like
your yoga, your screenings.
Yeah, those. Yeah, and a yoga class in this area does 12 people typically. I mean, it would be, I think, insignificant. It would fill the parking lot, not even, and people would just let themselves in.
But that activity is not tied in necessarily with the large venue concerts.
No. I guess that would be the answer. No, it would not be. They would not be the same. Those are 2 different activities that I'm proposing. Just to give a little more background on where I'm coming from, I used to run a nonprofit in Saginaw for 5 years called Counterculture Arts Collective, and we did all these things. We did art shows. We had a room that had art on display at all times. We were constantly curating art shows. We did like financial literacy workshops. So we would bring in accountants and we would invite people from the community to come in and learn how to buy ETFs and how to manage a 401k. We would do like film screenings. When the new Star Wars movie came out, we would show all 6 Star Wars movies over the course of a weekend. And so it functions, I would say, like a cultural center, which is, I don't know, not really something that we have around here. I don't know. It's just kind of a hybrid of our board of directors' interests, and we just kind of followed them as we went. And we never really had hours, which is kind of problematic. But if the event was good, people showed up, and if the event was bad, nobody came.
Anyone else have comments, questions? Okay. Is there a motion to close the hearing part?
Point of order. It'd be, there's one additional portion of the public hearing portion. If the applicant is finished, or if you were finished interviewing the applicant at this time, it'd be the public comment portion of the meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Done asking me questions for now?
No, I believe you've done a good job for us.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here for public comment regarding the request by Mr. Champagne? Come up to the podium.
Yes, Melvin Correa. At one time, I'm assuming this church really did flourish. It was established in 1875, and I'm sure they probably packed in quite a few people at some point, and the neighborhood handled all the people that it did, that went there for church and everything, and all the events that went on, using the parking lot that's available and the surrounding areas to flourish and keep that church going for that many years. So I'm definitely in favor of this, and to see the church that, like I said, has been around since 1875 established, to see that to have a fresh breath of air and take off again rather than just be another building sitting there with nobody using it, I'm in favor of it 100%.
Thank you. Anyone else? We had one piece of correspondence regarding this request.
Yeah, there was one additional correspondence in support. It was provided to you. It was received via email from a Caleb Hopper.
Do we need to read it?
You can, if you want to read it into the record. It's
Okay. This is from Caleb Hopper, May 13th, 2025, to the Bay City Planning and Zoning. A letter of recommendation in support of zoning change for 906th Street, Bay City, Michigan, 48708. To whom it may concern, my name is Caleb Hopper, and I serve as the audio engineer at Midland Center for the Arts, the audio chair at Bay City Players, and the owner of Hopper Design LLC, a small audiovisual system design and installation company in Bay City. I am writing in full support of Ben Champagne's request to rezone a property to establish a new inclusive art venue. Ben is a person of outstanding character and deep commitment to the arts. He has a strong understanding of how creative spaces can positively impact individuals, foster cultural exchange, and bring communities together. His passion for local art and people behind it is genuine and unwavering. The venue Ben is planning will be unlike anything currently available in our area, a dynamic, welcoming space that supports artists and all kinds, from musicians and performers to visual artists and creators who often lack a centralized place to present their work. The venue will do just that. Beyond the creative impact, the venue stands to be a powerful catalyst for community development. It will provide opportunities for engagement, collaboration, and celebration of local talent, all while enhancing the cultural landscape of Bay City. I strongly encourage the zoning board to approve Ben Champagne's request. His leadership, vision, and dedication is to fostering the arts make him the ideal person to bring this project to life. Sincerely, Caleb Hopper. Yes, Larry.
Through the chair, was the email received back in March, and I forget, I know we discussed it, but was the email and the two comments received, were those read into the record at the previous meeting?
so the first question is whether this email is received earlier.
No, the email that was received back dated March 30th, that was on our desk tonight, and the two correspondence received back in April. Since we read this one into the record, do we need to ensure, I want to ensure that those other comments were also either read into the comments tonight or into the record tonight, or if they were previously, and I don't remember if they were previously.
I do not recall. I know the one from Janine Dawson, she was present that evening, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the two
Spoke during public comment.
phone calls were read that night.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because I honestly forgot, so.
Is there a motion to close our business part of the meeting?
I'll make a motion to close public hearing on Z 2502 and move into the business section.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 5 yeas, no nays. It's redundant, but is there a motion to open the business,
That was part of my motion.
thank you. Comments, discussion? I guess I would tell you, I'm in favor of granting the variance, but my biggest concern is parking. And if we can, I would like possibly something to address that in the variance where when we're having a very large crowd, that off-site parking would be obtained and provided for attendees.
I'm going to go through at least a couple of the standards. The use variance standard, there's 4 of them that we need to meet. Number 1, the property subject to the request cannot be used for any of the uses permitted in the zoning district which it is located. I do not believe this building feasibly because of the size of it and the way it is designed can be used for any residential purposes without undue expense and hardship on whoever tried to make that attempt to more or less getting permission from everybody to do it. So I don't believe there is any other use permitted within that zoning district that this building can be used for. The need for the variance is due to the unique circumstances to the property. Again, this would go back to the same previous case because of the size of what is now parcel C, and even including parcel A. The need for this variance with the size of that and the lack that it can be used for basically anything else other than this type of building or this type of, lack of better terms, I guess, business would make it unique circumstances because it was a church. I honestly cannot see this going back to being used as a church. And I'm going to address the parking at the same time with this one. As far as that, back in the day, as I understand it, and I'm not a historian, so I could be wrong, but most churches were attended by the people in the local area, so the parking lot didn't need to be as big to have most of the people attend the church because they were walking there. So it's not like today where everybody drives. So the parking issue from that, I don't know that we can require, at least feasibly require, the owner to obtain additional off-site parking, even though parcel A is not off-site. I don't know how feasible it would be to require someone to obtain additional off-site and then force somebody to use it. You can obtain it, but that doesn't, you can build it, but they may not come to that parking lot. So parking is going to be an issue here, I believe. That's why, at least my intent, if I make a motion for this, would be to limit events of 250 people or more to one time per month. At a minimum, that would at least hopefully limit the parking issue as much as possible. Will the variance alter the character of the surrounding area? I don't believe it will. I believe at one time this was used as a local theater, small theater type dinner event. It's been used as a church with a large number of people. I don't believe it's going to alter the surrounding area. There's some vacant areas in the area, and this building has been there as long or longer than most of the houses. And last, the unnecessary hardship asserted by the requesting party as justification for granting a variance is self-created. I don't believe it's self-created because this building was there before. I don't believe it can be used for anything else that is feasible anyways. So it is therefore not self-created by this applicant. And that's all I have.
Mr. Dreyer, I'm going to refer to the paragraph about reasonable conditions may be required with the approval of a special land use, meaning that the conditions may include conditions necessary to ensure that public services and facilities affected by the proposed land use or will be capable of accommodating increased services and facility loads caused by the land use or activity. That would be, in this case, parking, possibly, that's addressing. Is that correct?
So from looking at that particular item from the Zoning Enabling Act, I can speak confidently that it referred to things like water and sewer. I can speak less confidently towards parking. When it refers to public services and facilities affected by the proposed land use, that I think that was a specific carve out to make sure that any proposed use, say a special land use on a greenfield piece of land, could be supported by a community based off of water service, sewer, electric.
So A, be designed to protect natural resources, the health, safety, and welfare, as well as the social and economic well-being of those who will use the land or activity under consideration. Residents and homeowners immediately adjacent to the property, land use, or activity in the community as a whole. So that was looking at to address parking, because to me some of that would be affected by having over park streets there. That's all. If you
So any variance request, regardless of that item 4A there, is reviewed for compatibility based off of item number 3 of the variance standards, whether granting a use variance will alter the character of the surrounding area. That is a similarity and compatibility standard. You know, any use can be reviewed for its intensity. You're familiar as a member of the ZBA with reviewing, you know, whether a use is more intensive than what is existing and whether a use variance can be granted for it. So regardless of that, 4A, you know, parking is a consideration. As far as reasonable conditions, to Mr. Elliott's point, I'm not certain whether from a, you know, it would have to be determined by the ZBA what that condition looked like if you did condition additional parking of some form. I should say additional off-street parking, what form that looks like, and whether it's feasible for staff to enforce that as a mechanism.
I have one other question. Normally, when we have a parking lot, we require a planted facing the street. Is that required here?
Not for an existing parking lot. If there was to be a new parking lot or there were modifications made to expand a parking lot, then the green belt that you're referring to, outlined within the ordinance, that is required for new parking lots. But for existing lots, we don't.
Okay, so
If you like resurface a parking lot, it doesn't require it to go in.
thank you.
You're welcome.
My comments regarding the parking, and this would be under this discussion on section 122-103, special use approval, or special approval uses. And then the chart that we have at the top of page 3 of 13, where we have sample uses from section 122-103. We're talking about a facility that's in the middle of an R1, R2 district. The closest of something else is an O1, kitty corner across, it'd be 701 6th Avenue. I've just got an issue with that much parking being dropped into a residential neighborhood. Auditoriums and theaters with seating, with fixed seating or without fixed seating. We don't have any other venues like that in the middle of a residential district, and I've got a real concern with how that is going to affect the quality of life for residents in that neighborhood. An event of 400 people, even if you had 4 people per car, you're talking 100 cars in that immediate neighborhood, and I just got an issue with that. I think Mr. Elliott's attempt to ameliorate that through limiting it to 250 once a month may be a solution. I could be persuaded, let's put it that way. But I still have real concern about anything larger scale than that.
I have those concerns as well, which is why I'm suggested limiting it to no more than 250 people to one time a month, because that will hopefully limit that down. I believe if the use is what Mr. Champagne indicates for yoga classes and for small venues with 40 to 50 people, I don't think this will be an issue. And by limiting it to larger events once a month, will at least mitigate the impact on the neighbors as much as possible. If this goes back to not being used or we come up with some other use, I don't think any use you put in there, no matter what you do, we're going to have a parking issue. I think the only way you could limit it is to buy surrounding houses and make them all parking lots. And I don't think that's feasible.
A point of order for staff. Can you clarify when you were referring to the restriction that the Zoning Board of Appeals is discussing right now, that you had brought up the restriction on the number of or the size of an event? Was it if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying that events over 250 people would be limited to once a month?
Correct. No, anything over 200. If they want an event holding, say, maximum of 400, which is what their thing is, they can do that once a month.
And then, so then an event, say, of 175 people, that could happen multiple times a month?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify the number and the amount.
Right. If this group wishes to lower that number to a reasonable number, I'm willing to listen to that. I just put out 100 or 250 as a starting point, essentially, because I do believe we need to limit that, but I also don't want to put it so low that anybody owning or trying to run a business there can't realistically make a go of it. I mean, if you set it at 50, that's to me unrealistic. If you set it at 100 or 150, it's kind of borderline. So I don't know where that number is. So I'm willing to listen to options for that. But I do believe we need to restrict it to something to help the neighborhood. The 250 is an option right now. If we wish to lower it, I'm perfectly fine with that as long as we make it a reasonable number. Like I said, making it 50 people to me is not reasonable to make a go of a business. That's essentially telling a business, let's tell Myers you can only have 100 people a day. That's not realistic. So I think we have to find some number in there that is workable. I mean, keeping in mind, it was brought up, this was a church for years, and how many people used it. So hopefully a lot, but the way people are now, not so many. But I think we have to find something there, so.
I guess my comment to that would be, this is the amount of people that can be there for anyone would be what the fire department would allow. Would that be correct?
Yes, there's a occupancy that is determined by the fire marshal, and also with the in tandem with the building code.
And we don't know what that number is at this time.
No. Planning and zoning staff does not know what that is right now.
I'm having a problem with limiting. I'm having a problem picking a number. If there's some other way to alleviate this, which was my suggestion of using parking lots that are less than a block away, so that it would work for everybody. So that's my comment, I guess.
If we look at the chart at the top of page 3 of 13, which are the number of parking spaces required for the various types of venues. And look at those this is for off-street parking. This is not for street parking, but this would be the off-street parking requirements, right?
Correct. This is from the off-street parking section of the ordinance.
So, in an auditorium and theaters with fixed seating, we have 1 per 4 seats, plus 1 for each employee. So if we had an event that had 400 people in attendance, the off-street parking requirement is 100 spots, correct? My math is right. If we looked at auditoriums and theaters without fixed seating, you have 1 per 50 square feet of gross floor area. Now, I'm not sure what gross floor area is, but if we look at the main concert hall, we're talking about roughly 2,600 square feet. So 2,600 square feet divided by 50, how many is that? Does somebody, I've got a calculator. 600 divided by 50, 52. Now we're getting into the realm of required, I mean, we've got 50, what do we have, 39, 29 parking spaces in the lot that's on parcel A?
I would have to reference the applicant's application. Hold on. I believe at a count I did, it was 29. I think the applicant, when they did probably a more accurate count, said.
I think 29 is what I had read. And those would be, right, yeah, it is 29. Those would be the highest uses that we're talking about. The last one, assembly halls without fixed seating, dance halls, health spas, pools, billiards. One per 2 people who may occupy the facility at one time. Well, that would be a lot. 400, that would be 200 spaces, which we obviously can't accommodate. So I don't know. What's a reasonable number? You're right. If we're going to put a limitation on this, I'm not sure what that is.
We don't have any idea what the load, what limit, the load of parking would be surrounding that area. Is there any no parking streets? Is there?
The only observation that I would like to make, and I was even considering coming up for public comment, but kitty corner from this location was the former Van Buren Dinner Theater, which did go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They received a variance. Parking was also an issue. I don't recall getting into the numbers, as far as trying to pinpoint the numbers. I believe the motion was that the applicant or appellant would take steps to find other locations to provide that. And I believe that was in the motion. It's been a while since obviously I've seen that. But I think the Zoning Board of Appeals for that decision, for the dinner theater, made the general statement recognizing that there was a deficiency that, wasn't going to be met because that site doesn't have any parking. So all the parking was going to be off-site. So they approved it, and I don't recall a number being fixed. I do recall that they put the burden on the appellant to go out and get that additional parking. I don't recall vetting to make sure that we did, but I do recall the attorney's office that's across the street that the owner did strike a deal with the attorneys for the use of that parking lot. And then I know, because I've attended those dinner theaters, that parking lot was used. But I believe the parking lot deal, so to say, was after the decision of the Zoning Board of Appeals, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Zoning Board just felt, yes, there is a deficiency, there's no parking, so put the burden on the applicant to talk to the neighbors. Now, if he was to have approval, then he would be able to communicate, his needs a little bit better to maybe some of those surrounding properties, be able to strike, some type of agreement. But I don't think it was specified as far as making up a certain number of parking spaces.
So as an alternative, we could say, still limit it to the events to 250, or no more than 250, except for once a month, and limit it to the number there. And then also add that the owner or applicant make efforts to find additional parking. And essentially do what you're saying. Is that correct? Am I understanding correctly?
From my memory, I believe that's the case, because I don't recall them specifying the number that had to be set, but they did encourage the owner to go out and seek those agreements and try to get that additional parking.
And I will say this, I'm in favor of capping it to once a month to a certain number, solely so that down the road somebody else doesn't buy this and try to make this a weekly event where they're holding 400 or whatever the maximum the fire marshal allows every week, creating a bunch of noise and more people and more parking for the neighbors. Even if you find alternate, you're still going to have people parking on the street. I don't think there's any way we can avoid it unless the city comes through and says, we're not going to put any street parking around a whole block or something, and that's not going to go well with the neighbors either, so. I mean, I don't think there's any solution complete that's going to address every concern. I think we can try to mitigate it as much as possible, though.
Any other comments?
And one more, and I apologize because it just hit me. Obviously, this can't go through until they actually, and I don't know if we need to add this to the motion, until they obtain the correct building permits as well as approval from the Historic District Commission. Would that be correct, or does that need to be added?
It would not hurt to add that because of the enforcement of the building code and the historic district aspects of it. In the case of this particular item, if the enforcement action on the steps is not addressed before the property transfer, the steps become the responsibility of the new owner.
So there's other avenues to deal with it rather than here?
There are, yes.
Okay, so we don't need to add it here. I just want to be clear because okay. Thank you.
So we're at the point, is there a motion to be made based on our discussion?
I guess I will make a motion then that in case Z2502, that the use variance be granted based on the foregoing findings of fact. I move the ZBA grant the variance requested by the applicant with the condition, actually with two conditions. One, that events be limited to 250 people or less, except for one time per month, where it would be limited to the cap set by the fire marshal. And the other condition being that the applicant seek all alternative efforts to find additional parking.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additional discussion on the motion? Being none, roll call, pardon me?
I still want to raise an issue with an event of 400 people in that neighborhood. I think that's egregious for a residential neighborhood, and I can't support the motion.
Did I misunderstand Larry's motion? I wrote it down. Did I, Larry, can you verify? Were you putting a limit of 250 people at?
If I may, I wrote down that events would be limited to 250 people except for once a month when they can be up to the limit set by the fire marshal.
Okay, thank you. Call a roll.
All right, as a note from staff, since this is a use variance request, 4 votes out of 5 are required to pass a use variance. A vote at yes is an affirmative, a vote of no is to deny. Mr. Rice?
No.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes?
Ms. Rice? Mr. Sova?
No.
Mr. Condon?
Yes.
That's 3 yeses, 2 nos. The motion is denied.
Are we starting over?
Sorry, no, that the use variance failed to pass. I guess that is the correct way to put it, because it requires 4 votes.
I have a question, a procedural question. If one of the people that voted no wishes to make a second motion somehow to get this. Is that appropriate? Or are they just voting no to say, we're not willing to make I don't know what their reason is for voting no. If it's just solely the limit on numbers, if they're willing to propose something different, or is that not appropriate? If it's not appropriate, I'm perfectly fine with that.
At this point, the vote has gone through. That would have been before when the motion and the second came through. The final discussion was called.
Sir, bring before the group.
None at this time.
Do we have any appeals for next month?
We do not know.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Support?
All in favor, say aye. Aye.